Good morning to all the students. The topic for today's lecture is immunodiagnostic tests. So this topic is relevant to the various serological diagnosis, immunological assays for diagnosis of infections. Basically, we have the first modality. Basically, is for everything is microscopy, then culture. Then apart from non-culture diagnostics, there are serology, molecular tests, nucleic acid based test, now mass spectrometry. These are the different modalities of diagnosis of any infections in a scenario for an infectious disease. We all know that diagnosis of infections is very critical aspect for patient care. For efficient patient care, culture is a gold standard because it grows the organism, fine, but there are certain limitations with culture. Mainly, it takes time, and for certain pathogens like viruses, it is very difficult, not routinely practiced. So and culture also has advantage that it gives a growth. So you exactly know the susceptibility testing. You exactly know what we require to inhibit that infection. So to control, so if that scenario is there, it's fine. But due to the limitations, non-culture diagnostic is also very critical and now a very important modality. So one of the arm to that non-culture diagnostic is immunodiagnostic test. So immunodiagnostic test, they can be directly visible or they could be visible through a machine or a microscope, like agglutination reactions or precipitation reactions. They are directly visible, while there are other techniques like IFA immunofluorescence, which we see through the microscope, almost absolute radioimmunoassay. The most common is ELISA, which is most routinely practiced for immunodiagnostic test. Enzyme linked fluorescence assay alpha, which is technology applied in certain tests like minividas. So these are the different modalities. They can be manual also, they can be automated also. There is a range of techniques. This basically starts with your immunity lectures must have been covered, so you must be knowing about the antigen, antibody. So basically these uh, immunodiagnostic tests rely upon the detection of antigen or the detection of antibody. Antigen is as a result of the reaction of the body to immunogen or the antigen, antibodies are produced. Antibody combined with the antigen and leads to antigen antibody complex. Antigen antibody interaction is similar to enzyme substrate interaction. However, it does not lead to irreversible chemical alteration in either the antibody or antigen. It is characterized as non-covalent interaction similar to lock and key fit of enzyme substrate. It does not lead to irreversible alteration of antigen antibody, and this exact and specific interaction, it has led to many immunological assays like detection of antigen, antibody, diagnose the disease, measure the magnitude of the humoral immune response and humoral immune response, and identify molecules of biological and medical interest for diagnosis. So this antigen antibody interaction, basically it has various bonds which we can see. It can have hydrogen bonds, ionic bonds, hydrophobic interactions, van der Waals forces, and to hold they must be close, requiring high amount of complementarity. They should be complementary to each other, that is they are able to bind to each other. So you can see these white pictures, that is the electron micrograph of an antigen antibody complex, and the different shape indicate that the antibody is flexible. It's not that it will always have same shape. So among the immunological tests, the common ones are precipitation reactions and agglutination reactions. So they will ask about the definition. You should know precipitation reaction when the antigen and antibody they combine, they are reacted in an aqueous solution, or is it's and they form a lattice that is called precipitin. The lattice formation require polyvalent antibodies, and antigen must be bivalent or polyvalent, should be able to bind with this. In the left picture you can see the polyclonal antiserum is there. So the different valencies of the antigens, they are combining with the antigens. But if there is a monoclonal antibodies, they will bind to particular epitopes only, and rest they will not form a lattice. In precipitation reaction, they were once popular, but they now have been replaced by more sensitive test. The formation of the precipitate also requires that the antigen and antibody be present at appropriate concentration relative to each other. If one thing will be more or one thing will be less, they will not form a lattice formation and precipitation, and in agglutination, no agglutination will be seen. So in the left you can see when antibody excess is there, there is too much antibody. The red dots are antigen and the blue is the antibody. If you see the antibody excess is there, that is too much antibody, it prevents efficient cross-linking because they don't have antigen to bind. And in the extreme right picture you can see there is too much of antigen, that is antigen excess. So antigen is too much but antibody is less. So these are the antibody excess or antigen excess zones, the left and the right ones. The center one is the zone of equivalence, that is called equivalence zone, and it's a ratio of antibody to antigen is optimal at this zone, and a maximum amount of precipitate is formed, and in agglutinate is formed. And you can see the reactions in the middle. If you see how it goes, if excess of antibody, no lattice formation; excess of antigen, no lattice formation. This is again depicted in this picture. Characteristic of precipitation reaction: increasing amount when there is in the center. You can see the optimal amount of precipitate, optimal amount of antigen and antibody, leading to the right form of precipitate. While if the excess is there, the precipitate is less clearly or almost absent. So this is the curve which we have discussed. So antibody excess, there will be no precipitate; antigen excess, no; and zone of equivalence, highest amount of precipitate is there. So the initial from the zone of the prozone is a term which we use for excess antibody is present, and post zone is the terminology we use when excess antigen is present. So again, this prozone and post zone phenomena are the reason for false negative reaction, if you understand. So the antibody is there, but if the prozone or the post zone phenomena is there, so they will produce false negative reactions. Even the patient is infected, but we have to solve this issue while putting the test. This we can do by serial dilutions. This characteristic example of this is brucella infection. In brucella, there are blocking antibodies are there initially, but when we produce a dilution of these serum, you see initially there will be that is basically an agglutination reaction. But just to explain, in the brucella, that is there if we dilute it, serial dilution we do, the reaction come positive, but initially with the undiluted serum the reaction doesn't come positive. You remember the example of brucella for the agglutination reaction, but just to explain the phenomena of prozone and post-zone, I brought that brucella here, but remember that in agglutination. Precipitation reaction, antigen antibody interaction, they can form visible precipitate. The characteristic examples are radial immunodiffusion, double immunodiffusion, and immunoelectrophoresis. We will see through the diagrams these immunodiffusion techniques. That could be radial immunodiffusion. This is the characteristic example. We will talk about it. Just we can go through some slides. A single diffusion technique where antibody is put into the gel throughout, and antigen is measured by the size of the precipitin ring formed when it diffuses out in all direction from the well which is cut into the gel. This is another is a double diffusion, or this is called Octoloni double diffusion. If you can remember the names. In this, both antigen and antibody diffuse from wells into a gel medium. We will talk about it. Basically, the medium which we use is the agar, which was earlier used, but now we use agarose. Agar is a high molecular weight complex polysaccharide from seaweed. Agar has strong negative charge, so that's why it's not an ideal thing to use. While agarose, it's a purified agar, it has no charge, no interaction between gel and the reactants, and there are minimized reactions. And it's used to help stabilize the diffusion process, it's not process, it's process, and allow visualization of precipitin bands. Coming to the radial immunodiffusion, we will see in the diagram the antigen from the sample is added to the antibody rich medium, and antigen antibody continue to react until the zone of equivalence, that is where the optimal concentration is there, and the area of the ring is measure of the antigen concentration. We will see with this diagram, like in the center there is a well where we have added the antigen and there is a antibody incorporated agar throughout. Now the antigen will diffuse out and it formed a ring which is depicted here as a blue ring. The ring will be formed where antigen and antibody are in optimal concentration, and the diffusion of the antigen through an agarose gel containing antibody, this a precipitin ring will be formed, and the size of the ring, if more of the antigen is there, the ring will be larger because it will require more diffusion through the agar for an optimal concentration. So, used to determine the concentration of specific proteins which has low sensitivity. So, if you can see, these are in the topmost image, there are different variation of antigen is there, and you can see a same concentration of antibody is there in the yellow phase, you can imagine. So, the real picture comes, there is the precipitin ring will be formed of different sizes depending on the varied antigen concentration. Now we can use this to know the unknown concentration. How we can do? If we know, if first we can make a graph by taking the known concentration of antigen and the known antibody. Like if we add a known concentration of antigen in one well, then increasing known concentration in subsequent wells, and we get to know a graph. That is, if we put this much in antigen concentration, this much will be the ring diameter. If this much antigen concentration, this much, that we know. Now we put an unknown antigen in that and put the value of the ring diameter into the graph, and from that graph we get to know a semi-quantitative way the semi-quantitative concentration of antigen in that sample. Why I am using semi-quantitative? Because that's an indirect way of getting. Quantitative where we exactly quantitate how much it is. But when we do things like this, we always do in ELISA also. For quantitative ELISA, we basically call them semi-quantitative ELISA, because we are depicting from some graphs. We are taking out if this much value is there, this is the value of the analyte we are testing. So when for the test strain or the test sample we are telling, if this value is coming, then we assume that will be the concentration. That is the thing when we apply for the semi-quantitative. But quantitative, example, when we do anything like PCR we are doing. So if that gives a copies per ml, so that's the quantitative method. Okay, we are not predicting from something. Okay, so this is the way of getting to know the concentration of different analytes. So this measurement of this ring can be done by a micrometer, which can help at how much is the, it's not subjective, it has to be objective, that we can measure the different sizes of the rings through this micrometer eyepiece. So bringing those to radial immunodiffusion and the double immunodiffusion, here the antibody is incorporated into the gel, the radial immunodiffusion, while only antigen is moving out. While double immunodiffusion, one well has antibody and another well has antigen. They move towards each other also in other direction, and the ring will be and the precipitation line will be formed, whereas optimal concentration is there. So this is the only difference between radial and immuno. Just for awareness, you know, but these are not routinely used nowadays. Okay, this we have seen. This also we have seen. So this is an example how we can see this. in this diffusion, the where antigen, different types of antigen are there at the topmost post. Where a precipitin line is there, that means that antigen is there. Where line is not there, we can see there is no antigen antibody reaction, and there is lack of that particular specific antigen against that antibody, that is not there in that sample. So this way we can diagnose this. It can help in diagnosis of the certain disease. This can also help to look at the serological identity or the presence of common epitopes among the different antigen. Even if it is coming, if we can see the top picture, we have the antibody against the anti-1. You can see the yellow round thing, that has antibody against the anti-1, and antigen, let's say there is one antigen has epitope for 1 and another has two epitopes 1 and 3. So due to this common sharing of the antigen, there is a fusion of line at the junction to form an arc. This serological identity is due to the presence of common epitope. See the next picture, you can see in the yellow antibody there is anti 1, 2 and 4. Let's see this. So, and the antigen, there are one antigen is 1 and another is 2 and 4. That means there is no common sharing among those. In the top picture, there was sharing of antigen. One has 1, another has 1 and 3. So, sharing of antigen. So, there is a fusion of lines. But another two, the antibody is there against all the epitopes of antigen, but both the antigen are totally different. There are no common epitopes among them. So, they will cross lines will be there. They demonstrate two separate reactions because antibody is there again 2 and 4 also, antibody is there again 1 also. So they will form the cross lines, there will no fusion like this, and they compare antigen, they shared no common epitopes. So that is the thing which is coming out. Another thing is the fusion of two lines with spur. Now you can see the yellow one has antibody against 1 and 2 both, but in the antigen we have 1 and 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 will combine with 1 and 2 also, with 1 also, but there is a difference among those antigen. Okay, so these different types of, due to these different types of lines, we can make out what kind of antigen are there, what kind of antigen epitopes are there, whether they are similar, whether they are different. So these are the different applications for such reactions. When we add electric current to such reactions, it becomes immunoelectrophoresis. It incorporates electrophoresis with double diffusion, and antigen mixture. Basically what happens in this, till now we were just putting the whole antigen. Now we can separate out the antigen by putting into the electrophoresis. So different components of the antigen are separated out. Now we put against the antibody. So we will have different types of precipitin rings depending on the different components of the antigen. We will see through the diagram also. And antigen mixture is first separated by charge, then troughs are cut in the electric field and antisera is added to the trough. Antigen and antibody diffuse towards each other to produce precipitin bands. It is used to detect presence or absence of specific proteins in the antigen. Because we have separated them, it can be used for immunodeficiency or immunoproliferative disease. So if we see through the diagram, the topmost are the antigen. The antigens have been electrophoresed and separated into different components based on their charge. Now a trough has been cut. A trough is cut and antiserum is added. So now these antibody antigen reaction, you can see in the same antigen there are different types of precipitin rings are formed because there are different components. So through this we get to know which component is there. We can compare with the standards and get to know. This is just the elaborative picture from QB's a book, that how these electrophoresis can help. Another application is a rocket electrophoresis, which is just the antigen is with different concentration is the well, antibody is there in the agarose gel, and current is applied. You can see negative and positive charge. As the increasing concentration of antigen is there, you can see the bands which are increasing in size because antigen has increased, antigen is in the increasing concentration. So just another application for immunoelectrophoresis. Now from precipitation reaction we are moving now to the agglutination reaction. They are simple inexpensive, sensitive, they are routinely used, routine application. Latex agglutination is an example, Vidal test is an example, we do routine blood grouping as an example, then we do Brucella agglutination, that is standard agglutination test, it's an example of an agglutination reaction. So these are the different applications for agglutination reaction. How it is different from precipitation? There is interaction between antibody and a particulate antigen. There it was a soluble antigen. Okay, it was a soluble phase. The interaction between the antibody and the particulate antigen, it results in visible clumping called agglutination. And antibody that produce such reactions are called agglutinins. There it was called precipitants. Okay, so that's the difference. So you should remember this word, particulate antigen and soluble antigen. If soluble it is there, it is a precipitation. If particulate antigen is there, you should remember agglutination. In example of hemagglutination, the antibody can also cross-link cells or beads. Cross-linking of red cells is called hemagglutination, which you can see in the picture, and the non-cross-linked cells, they settle as a button at the bottom of the well, and the cross-linked cells, they settle in diffuse pattern. You can see in 1, 2, 3. It used to measure antibody presence and level. It used to measure antibodies to red cell antigen or other antigen bound to the surface of cells. This has also been used for different reactions. You can take a solid phase. In the center you can see the solid phase, that can be latex, that could be RBCs. We bound the monoclonal antibodies against the antigen which we want to see. Like if you want to detect certain antigen, we attach the antibody, and if that antigen, if that reaction will found that antigen, they will form a lattice and it will agglutinate. But if antigen is not there, these all molecules will be lying separately and no agglutination is there. So this is the principle for latex agglutination, heme agglutination. It happens like this. Like we do CRP. Example for that, the blue one is the latex which is coated with the antibodies, the blue one. Okay, now if they found the antigen, they will cross link like the visible agglutination and be visible like in the lower picture, the left one, that is a positive agglutination. But if they don't found the antigen, these all will be lying separately, no agglutination, like a number 2 reaction, that is the negative. This is commonly used. We use in a laboratory also for ASO, that is anti-streptolysin O, CRP, C-reactive protein. So these reactions are available. Okay. Another example of agglutination is the tube agglutination. That was slide, and again another is the tube. This we commonly use for Vidal test. Vidal test is done for typhoid infection, where we detect the presence of antibodies and also get to know the titer. That is the visible immune complexes formed by cross-linking cells with antibodies. Okay, so the serum, if have antibodies, we add the known amount of antigen. Whenever we are checking something, only one thing can be unknown. If 2 things or 3 things will be unknown, it will be difficult. But if reaction is not coming, then what is not there? Okay, so if you are checking something, everything has to be known apart from the thing where whatever you are checking. So in the Vidal test, you are checking the presence of serum agglutinins, that is serum antibodies against the typhoid antigen. These you will get to learn in the subsequent lectures for typhoid. There are different typhoid antigen, TO, we have antibodies against them, that is the O antibodies, TO and the TH and the AH, that is salmonella typhi, paratyphi A. That will be dealt in the enteric fever lectures. But for agglutination part, agglutination of the salmonella typhi by serum from infective patient can happen if antibodies are there, can be used to titrate the serum. So initially high amount of they will both are there, they will combine, but we put the serial dilution of the serum, and the last tube where the reaction is there, inverse of that titer is called the titer. That is, first tube has 1:20 dilution of serum, second double dilution, that is 1:40, again double, 80, 160, 320. That's where we put the serial dilution of the serum from the patient sample. Then we add a fixed amount of known antigen to the each tube. Okay, So till the time the reaction comes, we see all the tubes. The last tube here which we are seeing reaction is the 1 by 160. So to reverse reciprocal of the highest dilution is the titer, that is 160 is the titer. Okay, so different countries have different titers for typhoid. Like for the TO and TO we take approximately 160, 80 to 160. Similarly for TH, that is, and AH, we take different titers, and depending on these concentrations we give whether the patient has typhoid or suggestive of typhoid or whatever, we interpret that way. So this is the principle of the tube agglutination reaction. Another test is the complement fixation test, which is an example of this. You should understand this test, commonly asked. Complement is one thing which is utilized whenever certain antigen antibody reaction is there. So to understand complement fixation reaction, you should understand there are basically 5 components in this: antigen, antibody, complement, and the detector system or the indicator system. Another thing, that is RBCs and anti-RBCs. Okay. So we will talk about it. If, and not going to the, just listen. If antigen, let's say we are detecting any antigen, if the serum has antibody, if the known we are taking, it has one thing, whatever it is, either antigen, antibody, that is the known, and we are detecting another thing in the serum. Let's say we are detecting any antibody, we take the known antigen against it, we add the serum, we add the complement. So if the serum contains the antibody, that means it is positive for the infection, antigen antibody reaction will occur, and this complement will get utilized in that reaction. Now this complement is not available. Now we add a detector system or an indicator system, that is the RBCs, sheep RBCs, and anti-RBCs, which will lyse these RBCs. So these reaction will only happen if complement is there. That will help in occurring that reaction. So if this RBC lysis is not occurring in the presence of anti-RBCs, that means complement is not there, and that is complement has been utilized in initial antigen antibody reaction. So a negative reaction here, that means the sample was positive for antibody. Now if assume another way, that is antibody was not there in the serum sample, that means antigen antibody reaction must not have occurred, complement have not been utilized, complement is free. Now this complement will help in the second reaction to occur, to lyse the RBCs by the anti-RBCs. This complement will help that, and you can see the hemolysis. If the RBCs are lysed, that means positive reaction, second positive reaction means the sample was negative for antibodies. So this is the basis for the complement fixation test. This has been depicted beautifully in the diagram, which you can understand, and the binding complement to an antigen antibody complex complement is used up. This is the basis of diagnostic test that determine if antibodies to an antigen are present in patient serum or not. Okay. Coming to the another aspect of the lecture is the immunoadsorbent assay, that is the immunoassay is enzyme linked. First is the ELISA. You should understand the word ELISA. There is a very common question also asked in the Viva. It is always there in your Viva tray, the ELISA plate, and it is the most common, most applied diagnostic method for any infectious disease apart from the non-culture based method routinely used. ELISA stand for E for enzyme, then L for linked immunosorbent assay. Another applications for this are fluorescent immunosorbent or radioimmunoassay. We will talk about it, but we will initiate with the ELISA. ELISA tests, they depend on the enzyme conjugated to secondary antibody reacting with specific substrate. We will talk about this. Don't get confused with this. Similarly, simply this is one of the most sensitive of tests for antigen antibody. Basically, here we tag an antibody with an enzyme, and then that enzyme is there or not will be detected by adding a substrate. If it changes the reaction of the substrate, that means enzyme is there. If it doesn't change the if it doesn't lead to reaction with the substrate, that means enzyme is not there. Basically we put an enzyme tagged with something and detect the presence of that enzyme, similar to complement fixation. We were detecting whether complement is there or not. So it here enzyme, here an ELISA, at each and every step washing step is there. If no binding is there, everything will be washed off. If binding is there, it will not be washed off, it will lie there. So we will put everything in sequence and finally detect the presence of this enzyme. This enzyme will lie there if binding is there, and this enzyme will not lie there if no binding is there. And finally we detect the presence of enzyme by adding something which this enzyme can break into a reaction and give color. Okay, so this is the simple thing, we will talk about it. There are different variations of ELISA. It allows for qualitative or quantitative testing. Each one, quantitative is better, is semi-quantitative, as we use in that graph. Okay, each one can be used for qualitative detection of antigen or antibody, also lead to a standard curve based on known concentration of antigen antibody can be used for the graph, and unknown concentrations can be ascertained. There are different types of ELISAs: indirect ELISA, sandwich ELISA, competitive ELISA. To understand that, we will go to uh, this picture. You can see the one of the example of the ELISA. The antigen is attached to well in the plate. Let's say this, how we prepare. This plate comes automated from the company, manufactured. Like if you want to detect any antibody against like HIV, they will bind an HIV antigen there. A protein such as gelatin is added to block the uncoated surface. And now let's see how the reaction starts. Now we add the sample. Let's say this is an HIV antigen which has been tagged by the company or the manufacturer for detection of HIV antibodies. Now we add the sample which we say it is positive for HIV antibody. Now this red antibody, let's assume it's a HIV antibody. If the HIV antibody is there, it will complement to the it will bind to the HIV antigen. Now this is, we will do washing after this step. If HIV antibody is not there, let's say there is no antibody in this serum sample, or let's say the patient has antibody to some other infection like dengue. Okay, if no infection is there, it will not bind. If any other infection is there, it will also not bind. It's not that if any antibody is there, it will give positive reaction with this. It will only give positive with HIV. So if any other antibody, this antibody comes in the serum sample. If it is there, it will bind. We will do washing. If it will not bind, it will be washed off in the washing step. And if it is bind, if it will not washed off. Okay. So now let's say if antibody is there, it will bind. We have done the washing, it has not washed off. Okay. Now we add an monoclonal antibody which has been tagged with an enzyme. This green is the enzyme, this yellow is an anti-antibody to the antibody which we want to detect. Okay, this has been, so if this antibody comes, this has a property, this is antibody against the testing antibody. Okay, it will bind to all the antibodies whatever it finds. So if at a washing step this red antibody is there, this antibody which is tagged with enzyme we have added, this is called conjugate. Okay, it will come, and if it finds an antibody it will bind. If it don't find an antibody, it will remain suspended in the liquid medium. And when we do washing, if it won't find a red antibody, it will be washed off. So no enzyme is there. Okay, but if the red antibody is there, it will come and bind. So it will form a chain like this. Now we add something, a substrate which it comes. If the red antibody is there, this yellow antibody with tagged with enzyme will be there, and a substrate will found an enzyme, it will change the reaction and give a color. But if this red antibody is not there, this yellow antibody will also not be there, this enzyme will also not be there, and the substrate will not change any color, it will give a negative reaction. So this is the simple principle of an enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. So this way the picture will come. The blue one, it have found the antibodies and give the colored reaction because substrate has changed the color. And if it don't found any negative, if there are antibodies are not there, it will give a negative reaction like non-colored reaction. Okay, so this is the basic example. Now we go to this slide to understand. It is used to measure antigen or antibody presence, and concentration means semi-quantitative. We can have an idea how much antibody is there. It is far more sensitive than precipitin or agglutination techniques. We will see the relative sensitivities. It relies on the ability to covalently conjugate chemicals to the Fc region of the immunoglobulin without interfering with the antigen binding, that is enzyme linked, and the ability of the plastic to non-specifically bind protein, that is immunosorbent. In ELISA, an enzyme is bound to the Fc region of the antibody. Usually we use horseradish peroxidase or alkaline phosphatase. These are the enzyme used. The enzyme presence can be determined by use of colorimetric substrate. Okay. So finally we measure by absorbance by ELISA reader. We can compare with the standard curves, indicate the concentration, that is the semi-quantitative. If initially we have depicted with the known concentration of antigen and antibody, we make a graph, then we put into the graph and get to know the unknown concentration. Various assay formats are available. With this, this is again another image. All the reactions should have a positive control, negative control, assay control. These are called kit controls. The first, these control values, because if we put the test, we don't know whether the test is right or wrong. As a control, we put the known sample, and the range is there for that. If it comes into that range, then only we say the test run is valid, then only we report the test report. Otherwise we say test run is invalid, we repeat the test. Okay, all the tests have to be pass a quality control before going further. Okay, so these are the different examples or the formats. Like first is the indirect ELISA, in which we can, let's say antigen is coated and antibody comes, blue antibody, it will bind if the serum to the, if the antibody is there, it will bind. Then we add antibody which is bound with the enzyme which we saw in the earlier reaction. Now substrated added, it changes the color. So this is indirect ELISA. If you see direct is not used because direct is very expensive. Direct, you should understand, if antigen is coated and if you directly add the antibody, let's say if we tag this, if we tag this antibody which is coming with the enzyme, then we require a antibody, all the antibodies required to be tagged with the enzyme, but this we can tag the only one antibody against the antibody, and we get to know it's pretty cheaper compared to the direct ELISA one. Another reaction is the sandwich ELISA, that is, here the antigen is sandwiched between two antibodies. Let's say here we tag the antibody at the well, okay, not the antigen. Now we are detecting the antigen is this. The serum sample comes, we added, if antigen is there, it will bind. Now we add an antibody against this antigen that is known. This red one is unknown in this picture. In the above picture, the blue antibody is unknown, while in sandwich ELISA, this red antigen is unknown. The antibody we have added, antigen we are detecting in the serum, it's not there. If it is there, it will bind to this antibody. Now we add antibody against this antigen which is tagged with the enzyme. Now we add the substrate. If it is there, it's just a detection of basically this is basically done for detection of antigen. Another test is the competitive ELISA. Here the outside we incubate the antibody with the antigen to be measured. Okay, now we add, if this antibody has not been tagged, so it will bound inside and give high reaction, and if this antibody is already combined with the antigen outside, so it will not tag inside and the lower absorbance will be there. Okay, so the less of a reaction, that means the positivity is there. If more of a reaction, that means the less of the thing we are detecting is there in that reaction. Okay, we will see in further diagrams also. With this we can see this, we can elaborate on the competitive ELISA. Let's say one antigen we are detecting, the upper one, and we competing it with the labeled antigen. This is we are adding. Okay. Now this has been tagged with the enzyme and the antigen is there. This labeled antigen is what we know and we are adding. The topmost AG antigen is we are detecting, that we don't know. Now we add to the antibody. Now if less of the antigen is there in the sample we are detecting, this the labeled antigen will bound more to the antibody, and more, because enzyme is there, more substrate will be broken down, more colorimetric reaction, more absorbance. So if high absorbance value, less of the antigen is there in the serum sample what we are detecting. But if you see the extreme right, high amount of antigen is there, it will compete with it, it will, so less of the absorbance. Why? Because it will displace this enzyme linked antigen and they will compete, and more will bind, the more and such antigen will be binding to the antibody. Less of the enzyme linked antibody, enzyme linked labeled antigen will bound, less of absorbance, less of colorimetry. So in the graph you can see more of the absorbance, this less is the antigen in the sample. If less is the absorbance, more can be the antigen in the sample. So they compete with each other, and depending on the colorimetric reactions we get to estimate how, if antigen is there or not and how much is there. Okay, so this I think we have seen. The ELISA, they add primary antibody, incubate to let bind to the plastic, wash to remove extra unbound antibody. We put the serum sample, add antigen, incubate to let antigen bind to antibody, then wash, add labeled antibody. And this was the basic diagram for this. Another ELISA you should remember is the capture ELISA, basic, or the mu capture ELISA. Basically it is used in dengue. Okay, so here this is another format. Here we are, till now we were detecting either antigen or antibody. This has been specifically used for anti-human IgM antibody. Okay, this is basically used for IgM antibody. Okay, so basically we tag the anti-IgM antibody, also called capture antibody, at the well. Now if IgM antibody is there in the serum sample, it will bind. If IgM, and we want to detect whether IgM is there or IgG is there to know for the active infection or the chronic infection. This specific, if IgG antibody is there, it will come negative, but in other reaction, if it will come positive. Okay, so it's basically for detection of IgM antibody or the mu capture ELISA or the IgM mu capture ELISA, where we tag the anti-human IgM antibody. If serum contains IgM, it will bind to this. Now we add a known antigen against the detection, against the infection which we are detecting. It will bound to this IgM antibody, and then we add a monoclonal antibody which has been bound with an enzyme against this viral antigen, that is biotin or the monoclonal antibody, the viral antigen. It will bind, and this enzyme will lead to substrate reaction. So if we are detecting IgM antibody, you can say we are doing mu capture ELISA or the capture ELISA. IgM capture ELISA is specifically used for in the infection of dengue. Okay, so let just a bit about the substrate. We have talked about the enzyme, that is horseradish peroxidase, alkaline phosphatase. The substrate which we can use is the TMB, that is tetramethyl benzidine. It is a one-step substrate solution system. It's a stabilized, ready-to-use chromogenic substrate solution for ELISA. When peroxidase is the enzyme label, that if we are using peroxidase enzyme, the TMB can be the substrate. These are the ELISA instrumentation. As I say, after each and every step we should do washing. The washer is there, a plate is there, multi-channel pipette is there, which are used for this. Similarly, ELISA reader is also there. We will put this plate and do the reading, how much absorbance value is there. It's not subjective, just seeing on the color. We put into the ELISA reader and it gives values. On the basis of that value, we say whether it is positive or negative. You will always be asked what are the advantages or disadvantages of ELISA, because the most commonly used thing, it is specific and sensitive, wide application, Equipment is also cheap and available. Reagents cheap, long shelf life. Assay may be rapid. Its simultaneous assays can be done. It has potential for automation. No radiation hazard is there, which is there in the radioimmunoassay. But the disadvantage is expertise required to label and the purify conjugates, who makes it, and is susceptible to interference from non-specific factors like the person's ability, the degradation of reagents at the specific temperature. Different enzyme can be used. We have seen horse radish peroxidase, alkaline phosphatase, glucose oxidase, urease. These are different enzymes which can be used to tag the antibody for detection of substrate. Another example is radioimmunoassay. This now not used, but you should be now not routinely used, but you should be familiar with this. There we tag with the radioisotope. Okay, radioimmunoassay, it's a laboratory technique for measuring the levels of substances which have low concentrations in the blood, example hormones, and the sensitive and detection limit is very high, that is 10 to the power 15 molecules per liter. It is 10 to the power 3 to 10 to the power 6 more sensitive than colorimetric assays. And here the plasma sample from the patient containing the substance whose concentration is to be measured, the same substance with the radioactive, we add with the radioactive label, and we detect the radioactive label, it is there or not. Instead of enzyme there is radioactivity, like in CLIA, that is chemiluminescence assay, we add luminol. Okay, so different things are tagged. So if an enzyme is tagged, it's enzyme immunoassay. If radioisotope is tagged, that is radioactive label, like chloramine T is one of the example which is tagged, which if it is there, it is a radioisotope. If in chemiluminescence, if something gives a light, that is luminol, if it is added, it becomes chemiluminescence. So these are the different things which are tagged and has different names. If we come to an example, it's something like a competitive ELISA. Radioimmunoassay, very sensitive test used for measuring hormones, serum proteins, drugs at very low concentrations. It measures competitive binding of radio-labeled antigen against the unlabeled antigen to the high affinity antibodies. If we see through the diagram, in the left picture, here anti-HBs antigen, it's not the antigen, HBs antigen is an antigen, and antibody against the HBs antigen is for hepatitis. Okay, don't see it as AG as antigen, it's antigen, but it's antibody anti-HBs antigen, so don't confuse with that. Like if we have antibody against the HBs antigen, we have bound it at the bottom. Now there are two types of thing. There is, if let's say the patient is infected, so if the patient is infected, we add, let's say we add the infected serum. This round hollow one is the infected serum. It is the unlabeled. That is, if it is there, it is there. If it is not there, we are detecting it. Second thing we add is the iodine, that is the tagged HBs antigen, which is tagged with the radioisotope. Okay, so if the patient serum is infected, it will compete with the labeled HBs antigen. So less of the absorbance will be there. Absorbance will only means radioactivity will be more if more of the labeled antigen will bound. But if the infected serum contain the antigen, it will compete with the labeled antigen. It will also bound. Labeled will also, both will bind, but they will compete. So less of absorbance, less of radioactivity is there. In the second, the patient's serum is uninfected. So in that case, only the labeled will bound. So there will be more of radioactivity. So if you see on in the graph, if the activity of the radioactivity is high, that is on the HBs antigen bound to the radioactive bound is more, that means the patient is uninfected, and if there is less of this, it's infected. So it's similar to the competitive ELISA, but there we are detecting the enzyme activity, here we are detecting the radioactivity. But as we all know, the radioactivity is hazardous. Advantages: it's simple, sensitivity is high, large variety of radio labeled compounds are available. But the major disadvantages are the potentially health hazard, disposal of the radioactive waste, equipment is expensive, variability between the batch of labels, so it's not routinely used. It has been displaced with ELISA earlier. now with CLIA, that is chemiluminescence immunoassays. But it has, if you look at the sensitivity, precipitin reaction has less sensitivity compared to agglutination, which are less sensitive compared to ELISA. These are the different sensitivity of immunodiagnostic tests which is there, and you can see the ELISA are very highly sensitive. Okay, that is very high sensitivity. It can detect very less amount of antibody or antigen. Another thing you should be familiar in the immunodiagnostic test is the Western blot. Here, as we see in that in the initial part, that in the precipitation reaction, we separate out the antigen by giving a current. It's a modification of that. In this, we take the protein antigen which are denatured in the SDS, and we, by the applying of the electrophoresis, these the different proteins in the antigen, they are separated on the polyacrylamide gel, the blue one. Now when these different components of the antigen are separated, we transfer it to the porous membrane sheet. Now that yellow one, now this yellow porous membrane sheet has different components of the antigen. Now it becomes an ELISA. We detect the different ELISA and we detect different types of protein. This is applied in HIV Western blot. If there is intermediate diagnosis, we are not sure, we confirmed it by Western blot for HIV GP120, GP41 again, so or the HIV2 antigen 36 GP36, against those we get to know what kind of infection is there. Is used to identify specific proteins in mixture. Proteins are separated on SDS page. Proteins that transfer to membrane, and membrane is flooded within with either enzyme linked antibody like in the ELISA. Okay, so this way a picture can come, different reaction are there, we get to know whether it is the infection is there or not. If we have not done that, a single blot will not come, but there we get to know this protein is there, this is not there, and we come to a conclusion whether the infection is there or not. Another application is the immunofluorescence, which you should also be aware. In this, as I said, in the ELISA we tagged enzyme, in radioisotope we tagged radioactive compound, in CLIA we tagged light emitting compound like luminol, in immunofluorescence we tagged fluorescence emitting things. Okay, it provides a quick method for the identification of different pathogens. Antibodies, they are conjugated with fluorescent dye like fluorescein, rhodamine, phycoerythrin. If antibody bind to a specific antigen, they can be illuminated with UV light and they emit bright colors. There are two methods, again direct and indirect. As I said in the ELISA also, in the direct, it's not routinely done direct. It's very expensive because antigen is fixed in the slide and fluorescein labeled antibody we add against the thing, but we have to make a, all the antibodies have to be tagged with this thing, but antibody is commonly used. Antigen is fixed to the slide, we add to the serum sample. If antibody, they will combine, then we add an anti-antibody which is tagged to the fluorescent dye, and it will form, give a, and when we add the UV light, it will fluoresce. So these are the example. It can be used for CMV, HSV, that sort of reactions. And just last to complete, you should, that's, it's a common question, immunochromatography test. You should be thorough with this. It can always come as a short note also. So this is a basic format for any immunochromatography test. There is a sample pad. At the lowermost part is the backing where everything is put on. There is a sample pad where we put the sample or the analyte to detect the analyte. The yellow one is the conjugate, which contains the labeled thing, whatever we, then it's the nitrocellulose membrane which contains the test line and the control line, and there is last one is the absorbent or the wick. The main role of this, whatever is flowing through this, it should not go back, it should absorb everything, not to destroy a reaction. A typical schematic diagram of immunochromatography test, let's say at the topmost reaction, analyte we are detecting. Okay, let's say we are detecting anything, let's say analyte. Now it moves, and everything we know about this reaction. The initial thing, analyte is there or not. If it is there, the labeled antibody come. It can be the red particles which are saying it can be colloidal gold is there, which are tagged with the antibody against the antigen which we want to detect. Okay, if this antigen is there, it will bound to this labeled antibody. This has been tagged to colloidal gold. It will move forward, At the test line there is a primary antibody, at the control line it's the secondary antibody. First of all we will see the control line. Control line should always give a reaction, then only test is valid. So how this picture comes, when antigen is there it will bound to the labeled antibody which can be a colloidal gold. This will combine with the analyte and they will move forward, which you can see in the middle diagram. Now there is analyte is there, antibody which is tagged with the colloidal gold is there, it move forward, then the primary antibody it will combine with the analyte. Okay, so if it is there they will form a sandwich, that is colloidal gold antibody, analyte and the primary antibody. So this will give a color if it is there. And control line there are, this is the secondary antibody, this antibody is against the labeled antibody. You can see in the diagram this secondary antibody is against the labeled antibody. We can only add secondary antibody which will give reaction to whatever is already there in the strip, which we are not adding. If the antigen is not there, control line should always come positive, then only the test run is valid, is the validity. So the control, that is secondary antibody, is the anti-antibody against the labeled antibody. It will always come positive. So this is the basic schema for an immunochromatography test. If antigen is not there, this labeled antibody will move forward without the analyte, and this labeled antibody will not combine with the primary antibody. So the test line will not be there, while control line will be there, should always be there. Another thing you should always remember, the flow cytometry part. Basically what happens, we have, this is used for CD4 CD8 count. We add the fluorescence labeled antibody against, against CD4 we add anti CD4 antibody, against CD8 we add, and then we pass it through a nozzle. Through the nozzle they pass singly, and they separate out based, if they are single thing positive goes into one chamber, both are negative goes into another chamber, both are positive goes into another chamber. At the end it gives a count. Let's say left one is CD4 positive, CD8 negative, or CD4 negative, CD4 positive. Middle one is both are negative, third one is both are positive. So at the end it gives count, how many CD4 count is there, how many CD4 8 cells are there. So this way we can do flow cytometry. So these are the different diseases. Throughout the courses you will get to know what all scenarios these diagnostic methods can be used. It has been applied in majority of the diseases. So with this we conclude the lecture, and thank you.